first book of the Bible begins with two stories of creation. In Genesis 1, the stage setting is perfect blackness. You can't see anything. And the ruach of the Lord, the breath or the spirit of the Lord, hovered over the waters. And everything was tohu wavohu, chaos and darkness. And the Lord said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Evening and morning, the first day. Then the Lord said, "Let there be a dome in the heavens to separate the waters above the dome from the waters below the dome." And this dome can be called the firmament or the heavens, plural, Hashemayim. Then the Lord said, "Let the waters below the dome be collected," and they became the seas. And the dry land emerged as a consequence of collecting the waters below the dome into the seas. Then the Lord said, "Let there be vegetation, carrots, potatoes, radishes, turnips, all of that underground stuff, trees, bushes, fruit, I don't know what, grass, flowers, yes, okay. All green and growing things. Evening and morning, the third day." Then the Lord said, "Let's hang lights in the heavens, in the firmament." And he hung up inside the firmament the sun and the moon and the stars, the sun to rule by day, the moon to rule by night. Evening and morning, the fourth day. Then the Lord said, "Let there be birds who live in the sky and fish who live in the waters." And fish includes whales. It just means all sea creatures. And everything that does not live on the land. Whatever lives in the air, whatever lives in the waters, that's day 5. Evening, morning, day 5. And then the Lord said, "Let there be land animals." And I've only drawn one. I don't know what it is. Let it represent everything that lives on the face of the earth. The cattle, the horses, the insects, I don't know what. All that stuff. And lastly, the Lord said on day 6, "Let us make man in our image." So he made him. Male and female, he made them in his own image and likeness. Male and female are created together as aspects of a single human creature, humankind, humanity, and both are made in the image and likeness of God. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26, 27, if you want to check my reasoning. Evening came, morning followed, the 6th day. And on the 7th day, nothing happened. God didn't add anything more to creation. It was Saturday, the 7th day, the Sabbath day of rest. And This is the day that God consecrated and made holy by his own rest on that day. And the commandment from the Old Testament that says, remember thou keep holy the Lord's day, it's about Saturday, not Sunday. Anybody who thinks that Sunday is the Lord's day is violating the word of the Lord, because everybody knows that the holy day for the people of the Old Testament is Saturday. Sunday is when the whole process of creation began. That's the first day of the week, not the seventh day. And that's why we have Seventh-day Adventists who say everybody who thinks that Sunday is the day of the Lord is going to go to hell. Now, hell isn't mentioned as part of Genesis 1. I just thought I would throw this in here so you know where you're going to go if you think that Sunday is the day of the Lord, the day that we're supposed to keep holy. Hell is under the surface of the earth and essentially at the center of the geocentric universe. Nothing's underneath hell. It's the bottom of the elevator. God wrote it, I read it, that settles it. If I'm going to be a biblical literalist, I have to believe that there's a dome in the sky separating waters above it from waters below it. I have to believe that dry land and vegetation on the face of the earth are older than the sun and the moon and the stars. And I have to believe that there was evening and morning every day before the creation of the sun. So the evening and morning is not caused by the rotation of the earth in and out of sunlight. God has just got some stagehand back there turning the lights on and off at the end of the day. And I have to believe, I'm going to be a literalist, that the sun and the moon and the stars are all inside the dome that's keeping us from being drowned by the waters above the dome. God wrote it, I read it, that settles it. This creates a very bizarre vision of reality. Genesis 2 has a second story. It begins in the middle of verse 4. And the stage setting for this story is dirt, 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 nothing but dirt. And the reason we're looking at a desert, total desert, all around us, is that there were no plants, no herbs, nothing growing at all, because there was no rain and there was no farmer to till the earth. It was totally barren desert. And, it happened to be a stream, okay, coming up out of the ground. And God went down by the riverside, and he made a little mud puppy and breathed life into this creature. And he raised up the man from the earth, from the dust of the earth, or dirt. Women think men are made out of dirt ever since. Okay. And that's the very first thing created. Poor, lonely, naked man standing in the desert. And God takes pity on the man and creates a garden. All of the green and growing things, pleasant to the eye, good to taste, healthy, what do you call it? Vegan menu. Then God recognizes that the poor old man whom he has created first, before everything else, is lonely. And he says, this guy needs a suitable partner. And so, to try to find a suitable partner for the male, he made cats and dogs and sheep and oxen and dairy cows and horses and elephants and giraffes and rhinoceri and the platypus and rats, and did I mention birds? I guess he made birds, the chickens and the hawks and the eagles and sparrows and crows, and he brought all of these creatures to the man, and whatever the man called them, that was their name. And God created all of the animals on the face of the earth, trying to come up with a suitable partner for the male. I don't know what Adam thought when God brought him the giraffe and said, "Here, Adam, you think you could get along with?" No, I don't want a giraffe to be my wife. No, not a horse. Nice horse. I like horses. Okay, dogs are great. Cats, they have their place. But no, none of the animals of the earth are a suitable partner for the poor, lonely male. And at last God says, "Oh, okay, I got an idea." And he knocks Adam out, puts him to sleep, gives him anesthesia, and pulls out the bone that is nearest to Adam's heart, one of his ribs, and fashions that into Eve, the first woman. And when Adam came out of post-op and was awakened by God, and he saw Eve, he said, "This at last is bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh." And this story explains why a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife instead of to his parents. Now, this is a lesson about human relationships right now. This is not a story about science. It's not a story about the history of creation. This is the whole point of the story. And the fact is that there are no father-in-law jokes, except for this one that I have just told you. Everybody should laugh now, because everybody knows there aren't any father-in-law jokes. There are only mother-in-law jokes. And what's so strange about mothers? What makes them different from fathers? Why does the mother object to being left behind by her son, who goes and clings to a different woman? Well, I just imagine the first time that a Jewish mother heard this story, probably told around a campfire, some genius-inspired storyteller moved by the Spirit of God invented this story to make a point about family relationships. And when he reached this part of the story and said, "That's why a man leaves his mother," I can just imagine the Jewish mother saying, "What? Some shiksa is more important than me? I bore him in my womb. I nursed him at my breast. I gave him chicken soup when he was sick. And some nobody is more important than me." And the guy says, "Yeah, Mom, I can have sex with her." But no, the chicken soup, it was wonderful. Thanks for everything, Ma. The woman with whom the man has sex is more important to him than the woman who gave him life. That's a hard lesson for everybody to learn. Women, when your sons grow up and fall in love and leave you for another woman, you've got to let them go. Men, when you grow up and fall in love and choose a woman to be your wife for the whole of your life, forsaking all others, you have to forsake your mom. You have to cut those apron strings, cut the umbilical cord, because the new woman in your life, who's a total nobody in terms of your origin, is more important to you than the woman who was your whole world within the womb and in the very first years of your existence. You must take your wife's side when there's an argument between her and your mother. And women, you have my deepest sympathy, because I know a lot of men don't behave that way. Now, the second story contradicts the first story. In the first story, the human being is the very last thing created. The human being turns out to be both male and female, each of them created simultaneously in the image and likeness of God. In the second story, the male, the poor, lonely, hungry guy wandering around the desert, is created first, before the vegetables, before the animals, long before the woman. He's separated by everything else before she finally comes along. This is the exact opposite of the first story. I think that should be the end of the literalist project. That's it. I don't care where you got that idea. You didn't get it from the Bible. The idea of being a biblical literalist is not a biblical tradition, nor is it a Catholic tradition or a Christian tradition in the first 15 centuries of Christianity. This idea, God wrote it, I read it, that settles it, is garbage. And it injures the sacred scriptures to bring that garbage idea in. And after chapter 2, after you read it, outline it, get the plot summary, see the differences, you should say, oh well, obviously God is not writing literally the way I thought he would. The Bible was not written to teach us science. It doesn't do history the way we do history. Well, a friend of mine said to me when I was explaining I was going to work on this video, he says, well, which story is true? They're both true, and they're both false. Neither story is science. Neither story is history in the sense of chronology, giving us the proper sequence of events. But both stories are sacred, are inspired by God, are from the Holy Spirit, and they both have truths necessary to salvation in them. One story does not contain all the truths that are in the other story. I want both of them in my Bible because both of them teach me about God and about human nature. Both stories agree God is the author of everything, whether the things are named or not. In the stage setting for the first story, it doesn't say, and God made the waters. They just are kind of like sitting there. In the second story, it doesn't say that God made the dry land. It's just sitting there when the story opens, so that we've got some place where we can have the action take place. We can set aside the elements in the two stories that are necessary parts of storytelling in order to get at the inspired, sacred meanings of the stories. The differences between the two stories, where they contradict each other, make no difference. The ideas, the meaning about God being the source of everything are the same. Sex was God's idea. He's the one who designed male and female, not only for the human species, but for all of the other sexual species. He's the one who gave sex such great power. He's the one who thought that the male and the female should cling to each other and become one flesh in their sexual union, in their marital union. God knows what that feels like, and He's happy to give us that great power, that great pleasure of union with each other. The first story especially insists that male and female are equally human and equally godlike. And there is a command to be fruitful and to multiply associated with that sexual difference in the first story. In the second story, the joy of the male in finding a suitable partner is emphasized. It's exaggerated by the long search through the whole of the kingdom of animals. It's so that when he says, "At last, this one is bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh," the structure of the story helps the audience to feel, yes, at last. There's nothing like the love between men and women. It's the best thing in life, in the natural order. And the two become one, and when there is one living being, there's not a possibility of one dominating the other. The woman is created from superior material, and she's created when God has finished. She's the summit of creation. After everything else that God has created, the very last and best thing is woman. I especially like the second story as something that would have been told around the campfire in the darkness of the night, when there's nothing else to do back in the ancient world. Oh yeah, you can look at the stars, talk about them for a while. But there's just human ingenuity. Storytelling began probably with the very first campfire. And the middle part of the story, when God is creating ducks and geese and cats and rats and the platypus and the giraffe, and bringing them to the male to say, would this make a suitable partner for you? And the guy says, well, that hippopotamus is really a remarkable creature, God, and well done. But what are you thinking? You think a come on. And you say to the kids, do you think the man would want to marry a chicken or a sheep or a goat or an oxen? Okay, second story doesn't have any fish at all in it, so we can't mock fish. But it's like old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and you just make the kids laugh. And you can make animal sounds. You say, what sound does a horse make? What sound does a cow make? What sound does a cat make? A dog make? And you can get the kids involved in the story. And after they identify the animal and make the animal sounds, you say, do you think Adam wanted to marry the cow? No, no. And God looks like an idiot at this point in the story. What kind of God is he? All-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, all-loving, if he can't think that what the man wants is a woman, not any other living thing on the face. What's wrong with God? Well, the story is a joke. The story's for kids. The story's to make people laugh. It's not telling us about God, it's telling us about us and our sexual longing and our desire for marital union. And kids who don't know anything about sex, they'll get a kick out of the story, but couples will understand, at last, this is bone of my bone, this person is flesh from my flesh. I want to cling to this person. I want to be united with them sexually, morally, emotionally, spiritually. I want to be one with them. And the story, as I indicated earlier, suggests how conflict should be managed. Mothers-in-law must let their daughters-in-law be more important than them to the man. And the man must let go of his mom and choose union with his wife.